My son-in-law insisted my SUV needed a safety check before my weekend antiquing trip. The next day, when I picked it up, I dropped my keys and bent down to grab them. That's when I saw a small magnetic box stuck to the frame. Instead of confronting him, I quietly pried it off and stuck it to a city bus on a crosstown route. The next day, I got a furious, confused call from my daughter asking why I was circling the downtown bus depot at 3 a.m., where, are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me rewind and tell you how I got here because, sweetheart, this story has more twists than the back roads of the Smoky Mountains. Leaning on furniture, and I should sighing know more often. I've driven every one of them. I'm Beatrice B. Coleman, 67 years old, and I've been flying solo for 3 years, 5 months, and, well, I've lost count of the days. My husband Frank was a geologist. He died mapping a fault line in California, which was poetic in a terribly frank way. The earth literally shifted and took him with it. He left me with a beautiful, empty house in Asheville, North Carolina, and a heart that felt like one of his rock samples, layered, heavy and full of ancient pressure. Now, don't get the wrong idea. I'm not some helpless little old lady waiting for the world to happen to her. Frank might have been the one who could identify a mineral from 50 paces, but I was the one who turned his modest salary and my pottery studio into something real. While he was reading the story of the earth, I was writing our financial future. I parlayed a knack. We played charades in the dark, undervalued antique porcelain into a consulting business and a nest egg that would make a lottery winner blink. Let's just say my collections are worth more than the house they're in. The thing about having resources and living alone is that suddenly, everyone becomes an expert on your well-being. Enter my son-in-law, Jeremy. 2 years ago, when my daughter Chloe first brought him home, he was all charming smiles and vague talk about brand management. Now, he's suddenly Mr. Practical, a font of wisdom on home security systems, vitamin regimens, and of course, automotive care. Jeremy Hart is slick, 35 years old, hair that's always perfectly tousled, clothes that look casually expensive. He has that salesman's gift of making you feel like you're the only person in the room, and his questions always feel just a little too pointed. Chloe met him at a gallery opening. She's an artist, all heart and intuition, but standing Jeremy, there, older and wiser, well, Jeremy presented himself as a patron of the arts. My warning bells chimed softly, but Chloe glowed. After her history of dating moody sculptors and financially chaotic musicians, Jeremy seemed like stability. He remembered birthdays, fixed a leaky faucet my without knees being taught me asked, a harsh truth, and laughed at my age jokes faster than pride. I wanted to be wrong about him. So, last Thursday, when he fretted over my aging SUV before my planned trip to scour the antique fairs in Savannah, I swallowed my suspicion. "B," he'd said, leaning against my kitchen island with a concerned frown. "That Tahoe has 100,000 miles on it. A long drive on I-95? Let me take it to my guy, for peace of mind." Chloe, painting at the sunlit table, nodded without looking up. "Mom, he's right. You shouldn't risk it." And that's how I handed my keys to a man I desperately wanted to trust. Trust, I'm learning, is a vase on a high shelf. Beautiful, but a nightmare if it falls. I picked the SUV up Friday afternoon. Jeremy was all smiles, handing me a detailed invoice, paid, he assured me, for new brake pads, a fluid flush, a tire rotation. "Good as new, B. Safe travels." He even gave the hood a fond pat. Saturday morning was lush and golden, typical for early fall. I'm an early riser, a habit from decades of waiting for kilns to cool and auctions to start. My house, a stone and cedar place Frank and I built, was silent. I loaded my catalogs and a travel mug of strong tea into the Tahoe. The first clue was the traffic. A wreck on the bypass had everything gridlocked. Sitting there, crawling past the exit for the old textile mill, I fumbled for my sunglasses in my oversized handbag. The bag tipped, spilling its contents: tissues, lip balm, a tide of receipts, and my lucky agate stone from Frank, right under the driver's seat. Muttering a word Frank would have blushed to hear, I unbuckled and opened the door to kneel on the asphalt. As I gathered my scattered life back into my bag, my hand brushed against something that wasn't road grime or a lost bolt. It was a sleek, black, rectangular object, magnetized tight to the metal frame under my seat. It hummed slightly with a faint electronic vitality. A GPS tracker. I froze, kneeling there on the hot pavement, horns blaring around me. The world narrowed to that little black box. My heart didn't race. It just went very, very cold. Carefully, I peeled it off. It was generic, untraceable, the kind of thing you buy online. I didn't get mad. I got calculating. 30 years of negotiating with prickly collectors and shady auctioneers had taught me that surprise is a weapon best kept sheathed. I slid back into the driver's seat, placed the tracker in my cup holder, and drove on, my mind whirring faster than the engine. Instead of heading to Savannah, I took the next exit. I drove to the sprawling main transit depot downtown, a chaotic hub of buses, taxis, and people coming and going. I circled until I saw a city bus idling, its destination sign reading. The drive back to my quiet, empty house was spent in furious, quiet thought. Pieces began clicking into place like tumblers in a lock. Jeremy's recent intense interest in my estate planning, his helpful offer to digitize Frank's old appraisal files for safekeeping, the way he'd subtly quiz Chloe about my upcoming travel plans, my routines. I thought he was being attentive. Now I saw it as intelligence gathering. I didn't sleep that night. I researched. By dawn, I knew more about GPS tracking devices, their ranges, and their subscription services than any grandmother rightly should. I also called my financial advisor, Leonard, a man so discreet he makes librarians seem loud. I had him freeze any large transactions and send me copies of all statements from the last 2 years. Sunday morning arrived. I was in my garden, pretending to deadhead roses, when my phone rang. It was Chloe, and her voice was a tight wire of confusion and anger. "Mom, what is going on? Jeremy's tracking app is going berserk. It says your car has been driving loops around the city bus depot all night. He's really upset. He says he put a tracker on your car for safety after the maintenance, in case it broke down, and now the signal's gone crazy. He thinks you've been in an accident and someone stole your car." The gall of it took my breath away. He'd created a cover story and was using Chloe to confront me with it. I kept my voice calm, pruning shears snipping a dead bloom. "A tracker? He put a tracking device on my car without telling me, Chloe?" "He said it was for emergencies. He was worried. But Mom, where are you? The app says—" "I'm in my garden, darling, looking at my roses. My car is in my garage. It hasn't moved since I got home yesterday." This was true. I'd parked the Tahoe and used my little second-hand sedan for the bus depot mission. The silence on the other end was profound. "But the app—" "It seems Jeremy's safety device might be faulty. Or perhaps it's on something else." I let the implication hang. "Sweetheart, a man who puts a secret tracker on someone's car isn't worried. He's controlling. Or he's planning something." "Mom, don't make this into something it's not. He was just trying to help." Her voice cracked, the tension between loyalty to him and alarm at what I'd said pulling her apart. She hung up. 10 minutes later, Jeremy himself called. His voice was all strained concern, but beneath it, I heard a current of panic. "B, thank God you're okay. Chloe's frantic. This glitch with the tracker. I'm so sorry it caused a scare. I should have told you. It was just a precaution with the old car." "A precaution you felt the need to hide, Jeremy?" I asked sweetly. "That's an interesting choice." He faltered. I didn't want you to feel like I was overstepping, or to worry you." "Oh, I'm not worried," I said, and I meant it. "But I am curious. While your tracker was taking a nocturnal tour of the bus system, I was reviewing my finances. Funny thing, there are some discrepancies." small transfers over the last 18 months. To a shell company called Hartford Antiquities. Ring any bells? The silence on the other end was absolute. I'd taken a shot in the dark, blending his last name with my world. I'd hit a bullseye. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, the smooth veneer cracking. I think you do. And I think we should all have a little family dinner tomorrow night, to talk, clearly. I ended the call. My hands were steady. The hunt was on. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I needed to see his face. I needed Chloe to see his face, and I needed to know how deep the rot went. Monday evening, I set the table with my grandmother's bone china. I made Chloe's favorite pot roast, the smell filling the house with a false sense of comfort. I felt like a general preparing a battlefield. They arrived together. Chloe looked pale, her eyes avoiding mine. Jeremy was a masterpiece of forced calm, but his jaw was tight. He brought wine, an expensive Pinot, a peace offering, or a bribe. We made stilted small talk through the first course. Finally, over the pot roast, I laid down my napkin. Jeremy, I began, my voice conversational. Let's stop pretending. The tracker wasn't a glitch. I found it. I moved it. The Hartford Antiquities transfers? Leonard helped me trace them. $85,000, Jeremy, drip-fed from my investment account to a dummy corporation you control. Chloe dropped her fork. It clattered loudly on the china. What? Mom? Jeremy, what is she saying? Jeremy's face went through a terrifying transformation. The concerned mask melted into first panic, then a cold, calculating hardness I'd never seen. You stupid old woman, he hissed, the charm utterly gone. You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? Jeremy, Chloe gasped. It was supposed to be clean, he spat, standing up, his chair scraping back. A few thousand here and there. You'd never notice. You have so much. Then you started poking around, asking questions about the finances, talking about changing your will. I needed a bigger stake. The tracker was to know when you were out of the house for long periods. My associate was going to do a more thorough search during your Savannah trip. Your associate? I asked, ice in my veins. For the bigger score, he smirked, a ugly, triumphant look. The real prize isn't cash transfers, B. It's the collection. The Qing Dynasty vase, the Art Nouveau jewelry, the Rothko sketch Frank bought for a song. My contact has a buyer in Dubai who doesn't ask provenance questions. We were going to replace them with fakes. You'd be too senile to notice until we were long gone. Chloe was sobbing silently, hands over her mouth, watching the man she loved disintegrate into a monster. You were going to rob me and gaslight me, I said, nodding slowly. And you married my daughter to get access. Access and alibi, he corrected, a nasty smile on his face. Who would suspect the devoted son-in-law? And if you did start ranting about theft, well, Chloe would just think her elderly mother was slipping. I'd be the one comforting her, managing your care. That was it. The bridge too far. I stood up, my old bones feeling strangely powerful. Get out of my house. Or what? He laughed. You'll call the police? I'll deny everything. It's your word against mine. A confused widow with a suspicious mind. I'll spin such a story about your decline, B. You'll be in a nice home before Christmas, and I'll have power of attorney. He was right. It was a perfect, heinous plan. I had the financial records, but the theft was circumstantial. The tracker was gone. It was my word against his. That's when the doorbell rang. We all froze. I walked to the front door and opened it. Standing there was a large, grim-faced man in a rumpled suit, flanked by a uniformed police officer. Beatrice Coleman? I'm Detective Morrison. We spoke earlier. May we come in? I'd made one call after talking to Leonard. To a private investigator Frank had used years ago. I'd given him Jeremy's name, the company name, and a retainer. He'd worked fast. Detective Morrison looked past me to the dining room, where Jeremy stood frozen. Jeremy Hart, we'd like to ask you some questions about fraudulent wire transfers and about your communications with a known fence named Marco Varelli. We've been listening to Mr. Varelli's wiretapped phone for weeks. You have a very distinctive voice, sir. The color drained from Jeremy's face. He'd been arrogant. He'd used his own phone, his own accounts, thinking an old woman was no threat. He'd tied himself directly to a criminal investigation already in progress. As the officer cuffed him and read him his rights, Chloe finally broke. She screamed at him, a raw, guttural sound of pure betrayal, throwing the bottle of expensive wine he'd brought. It missed him and shattered against the wall, a bloody stain on my pale paint. Jeremy Hart pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud, attempted grand larceny, and conspiracy. The plea deal meant a longer sentence, but spared Chloe the torment of a trial. He's serving 7 to 10 years. The aftermath was harder than the confrontation. Chloe's world was ash. Her marriage, her trust, her judgment, all burned away. She moved back home for a while, not speaking for days, just sitting in my studio, watching me wedge clay. One afternoon she spoke. Her voice was hoarse. "How did you know, Mom? Really?" I thought about it, my hands deep in the cool, yielding earth. "The tracker was the proof," I said. "But the feeling, it was like seeing a fake. I've handled 100 forged Famil rose vases, Chloe. From a distance, they're beautiful, perfect. But up close, the glaze is wrong, the weight is off. The marks are too crisp. He was a beautiful fake. My gut knew before my head did." She nodded slowly. "What do you do with the fake pieces, the forgeries?" I smiled a little. "Sometimes you smash them to pieces so they can't fool anyone else." I looked at her, my strong, creative, heart-led daughter. "And sometimes, if the clay is still good, you reclaim it. You wedge it, you work out the air bubbles, the imperfections, you add new material, and you put it back in the kiln. What comes out isn't what it was pretending to be. It's something new, something true, and it's always stronger for having been through the fire. It took time, so much time. But slowly, Chloe began to wedge her own life again. She left my house. She started painting once more, fierce, vibrant canvases full of emotion she'd locked away. She's even started teaching art classes at a community center, helping others find their voice. As for me, I'm 68 now. My collections are fully documented, photographed, and insured. I've taken a young, sharp-eyed antiques dealer named Marcus on as a sort of apprentice, protege. We're writing a book on spotting forgeries. I've also become a rather vocal advocate for elder fraud awareness, giving talks at senior centers. My closing line always gets a laugh. If someone offers to check your brakes for free, check your wheel wells for trackers. Frank's agate stone sits on my potting bench. I touch it for luck sometimes. He loved the solid, ancient truth of rocks. I think he'd appreciate that I found my own bedrock, not in stone, but in my own stubborn, discerning heart. The world is full of beautiful fakes, darlings. Learn to feel the weight, trust the glaze, and never ever be afraid to kneel down and look underneath. The weeks after Jeremy's arrest were a silent, aching blur. My house, once filled with the comforting ghosts of Frank and happy memories, now echoed with the phantom sounds of that final dinner, the clatter of the fork, the shatter of the wine bottle, Chloe's shattered sob. I cleaned the crimson stain from the wall myself, scrubbing until my knuckles were raw. The physical mark was gone, but the shadow remained. Chloe retreated into a cavern of grief that frightened me more than Jeremy ever had. She wasn't crying anymore. She was inert. She'd sleep until noon, then wander the house in Frank's old wool cardigan, staring at family photos as if trying to decode a foreign language. She stopped painting entirely. The studio, her studio we'd built in the sun-drenched conservatory, gathered dust. The kiln was cold. I tried the usual things: gentle encouragement, suggesting therapy, making her favorite foods. She'd smile a ghost of a smile and say, "I'm fine, Mom." But she was a hollow vessel. My anger at Jeremy curdled into a deeper, more chilling fury. He hadn't just stolen money, he had stolen my daughter's light. The legal process ground on, a slow, impersonal machine. Detective Morrison kept me informed. Jeremy, through his lawyer, was trying to paint me as manipulative and Chloe as unstable, hoping for a reduced sentence. The gall was bottomless. One rainy Tuesday, I'd had enough of the silence. I didn't make tea. I didn't speak softly. I marched into the conservatory where Chloe was curled on the window seat, watching the rain trace paths on the glass. "Get up," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She blinked at me, dull-eyed. "Mom?" "Up. Now." I walked to my heavy wooden potting bench and cleared a space with a sweep of my arm. I took a fresh 25-pound block of moist gray clay from the storage bin and slammed it down on the canvas. The impact made her jump. "What are you doing?" "What you're not," I said. I cut a hefty wedge with my wire tool and thrust it toward her. "Here." "I don't want to. I don't care what you want." The words burst out of me, startling us both. "He took enough, Chloe. He doesn't get to take this too. This is yours. This was here before him, and it will be here after. But it's like muscle. It atrophies." Tears finally welled in her eyes, not the quiet ones of sadness, but ones of frustration. "I can't. Don't you get it? Everything I feel is ugly, broken. What am I supposed to make, a bust of a con man?" "Make that," I insisted, pointing at the ugly, formless lump of clay. "Make the ugly, make the broken. Don't make it beautiful. Make it true. Smash it if you want to, but do something." I turned my back on her, attacking my own wedge of clay, wedging it violently on the canvas, slamming it down, folding it over, pounding the air out. For minutes, the only sounds were the sticky thuds of clay and the drumming rain. Then I heard it, a softer, hesitant thud, then another. I didn't turn around. I just kept working my clay, my own tears mixing with the clay's moisture. Behind me, the sounds continued, tentative, then stronger. Then, after a long while, I heard a different sound, a wet, crushing, satisfying smack. She'd thrown it. "Good." "Again," I said, still not looking. I heard her cut another wedge. We didn't speak for 2 hours. We just wedged clay. By the end, my arms ached, and the studio floor was spattered with gray. Chloe's block was reduced to a pile of aggressively kneaded, airless lumps. She was breathing hard, a faint flush on her cheeks. She looked at her clay-streaked hands, then at me. "It's still ugly." "I know," I said, my voice gentle again. "But now it's ready. The air bubbles are gone. It won't explode in the kiln. It's prepared to become something." I handed her a damp sponge. "We'll try again tomorrow." Marcus Shaw arrived on a Thursday, punctual as a metronome. He was 30, with the careful, observant eyes of a born cataloger, and a slight nervousness he tried to hide behind a crisp blazer. He'd responded to my ad for an assistant researcher for the book project, but his email had stood out. It didn't just list qualifications, it told a story about his grandmother, who'd been swindled out of a valuable Canton porcelain bowl by a charming appraiser. Marcus had dedicated his career to preventing that from happening to others. "Mrs. Coleman," he said, shaking my hand with a firm, dry grip, "your collection is legendary in certain circles. It's an honor." "Call me B," I said, leading him into the living room, which also served as my informal gallery. "And don't be too impressed. Legends are often built on luck and stubbornness." I watched him as he took in the room. His eyes didn't glaze over with dollar signs like Jeremy's had. They sharpened. He noted the display lighting, the humidity controls, the way a particular Meissen figurine was placed to avoid direct sunlight. He was reading the room like a text. "The Rothko sketch," he said, nodding to the simple frame on the far wall. "Frank found it rolled up in a basement in Sedona, yes? Listed as modern daub." I felt a pang, both painful and sweet. "You've done your homework. It's a famous story among preservationists, the triumph of knowledge over ignorance." He turned to me. "That's what I want this book to be, a tool. Not a dry academic text, but a field guide for people who love objects but don't want to be fooled by them." Over tea, we sketched out the plan. The book would be organized by deception, forgery, fakery, Frankenstein pieces, the honest reproduction. Each chapter would use examples, some from my collection, some from infamous historical cons. My role was the stories, the gut instincts, the feel of a piece. His was the forensic detail, UV light tests, glaze chemistry, provenance paper trails. Chloe emerged from her room, drawn by the voices. She hovered in the doorway, wary. "Chloe, this is Marcus Shaw. He's helping with the book. Marcus, my daughter Chloe. An incredible artist when she's not being a hermit." Chloe shot me a look but offered a small smile. "Don't let her bulldoze you." Marcus stood polite. "I'll consider it fair warning. I've been looking at your mother's pottery in the studio. The crystalline glazes on those tall vases are extraordinary. The copper reds are perfect." He wasn't flattering her. He was stating a fact. And he'd noticed her work, not just mine. A flicker of the old interest sparked in Chloe's eyes. "You know about crystalline glazes?" "Enough to know how difficult they are to fire correctly," he said. "A 1-degree variance can ruin it." She nodded slowly. "It's all about patient disaster. The first genuine connection I'd seen her make in months." I poured more tea, hiding my relief. The bookwork became our anchor. Mornings were for writing. Marcus would arrive with printouts, photographs, and a list of meticulous questions. "B, the story of the Regency desk you bought at the Georgia auction, the one with the replaced brass handles. What was the first thing that felt off to you?" "The wood," I'd say immediately, closing my eyes to remember. It was the right mahogany, aged beautifully, but when I ran my hand underneath the writing slide, it was too smooth, no tool marks. It had been sanded by a machine, not a plane. A piece that old, worked by hand, has a rhythm to it. This was a silent stretch. That's where you look for the lie, in the places no one thinks to show you. Marcus would nod, typing fast. The hidden narrative, the story the object doesn't want to tell. Chloe started joining us, at first just listening, then sketching in her pad. Not grand paintings, but quick studies of objects we discussed. The joinery of a fake Chippendale chair, the too perfect crazing on a forged Majolica plate. Her art was becoming forensic, a search for truth in line and shadow. One afternoon, Marcus brought in a small velvet-wrapped parcel. His expression was grave. "I need your opinion on this. It's not for the book, it's personal." He unwrapped a delicate pendant necklace, late Victorian, a pear-shaped amethyst set in silver filigree. It was lovely, but my eye went straight to the clasp. It was wrong. A later, clumsier replacement. "It was my grandmother's," Marcus said softly, answering my unspoken thought. "Or rather, it was sold to my grandfather as her original pendant, lost during the war. He paid a small fortune for it 40 years ago, a reunion gift. She wore it every day until she died. She never knew." "The stone is real," I said gently, holding it to the light. "The setting is period, but the clasp and the silver here around the bail, it's been resoldered. This is a Frankenstein, parts of the original, assembled with later elements to complete it." He took it back, his fingers tracing the flawed clasp. She loved it so much. Knowing it was a composite, does that make it less valuable? I thought of Frank, of our life, a composite of joy and struggle and quiet years. I thought of Chloe, piecing herself back together. Its value to her was real, I said. Its monetary value is less. Its value as a warning. That's where our book comes in. To help the next grandson ask the right questions before he buys. I looked at him. We'll use it. We'll call it The Grandmother's Pendant. A story about love, loss, and the lies we want to believe. Marcus gave a slow, grateful nod. Chloe across the table was already sketching the pendant, her pencil capturing the elegant lie and the clumsy, truthful repair. Detective Morrison's call came just as we were finishing a chapter on forged signatures. Mrs. Coleman, Jeremy Hart has requested a visitor. You're on his approved list. He says he has information you'll want to hear. My blood ran cold. I have nothing to say to him. He's insistent. Says it's about other parties involved. Could be a ploy, could be him trying to barter for something. But given the international angle with the fence Varelli, I have to advise you to consider it. You could bring your daughter for support. The idea of Chloe within 100 miles of that man made me nauseous. Absolutely not. I'll go with you. I turned. Marcus was in the doorway, having overheard. His face was set. You shouldn't face him alone. I can drive. I can be a witness. I saw the determination in his eyes. This was no longer just about a book. It was about the aftermath of the crime we were documenting. I reluctantly agreed. The State Correctional Facility was a bleak, low-slung building of concrete and wire. The visiting room was a cacophony of murmured conversations and crying children. When Jeremy was let in, wearing bright orange, he seemed smaller, deflated. But his eyes, when they found me, still held that cold, calculating glint. "B, you look well." His voice was a dry rasp. "You don't," I said flatly. He smirked, ignoring Marcus, who sat rigidly beside me. "I've had time to think, to reflect on my poor choices." "Get to the point, Jeremy." "The point is, I wasn't working alone. Not really. Marco Varelli had a partner, a silent partner, someone who identifies targets, rich widows with specific portable collections, someone with inside knowledge of the antique world." A chill crept down my spine. "Who?" "I never met them. Code name only. The Curator." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "But I heard things. This person is still out there, B, and you made a very loud, very public mess of their operation with me. You humiliated their fence, cost them a payday. The Curator doesn't like loose ends, or loudmouths. It was a threat wrapped in a supposed confession. He was trying to scare me, to exert control from behind bars." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I'm not a monster," he said, spreading his hands. "I got in over my head. I want to make amends. Maybe if I help, it's considered at my parole hearing." Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice calm and clear. "You have names, dates, specific transactions you could provide to the police. Do you have those, or just ghost stories?" Jeremy's eyes flicked to Marcus with dislike. "Who's this? Your new bodyguard, replacing me already, Chloe?" That was his goal. To poison, to divide, to instill fear. I stood up. "Thank you for the warning, Jeremy. I'll take it under advisement. Along with the fact that you're a proven liar." His smug mask slipped. "You're making a mistake, B. You think you're so clever, but you're just a lonely old woman with a big target on her back. The Curator is real." "Then I hope Detective Morrison has a long talk with you about them," I said, and I turned and walked away. Marcus a solid, steady presence at my shoulder. Outside in the punishing sunlight, I trembled. "He was trying to manipulate you," Marcus said, opening the car door for me. "I know," I said, buckling my seatbelt with fumbling hands. "But the best lies are woven with truth. What if there is a Curator?" Marcus started the engine. "Then we do what we're already doing. We document, we research, we get smarter, and we don't let fear make our decisions for us." He glanced at me. "That's what you taught Chloe, isn't it? Don't let him take the clay from your hands." I looked at this serious, kind young man. And for the first time since the tracker, I felt a surge of something other than dread. It felt like having an ally. Chloe's breakthrough came unexpectedly. The local arts council was holding a themed exhibition. Transformation. From ruin to revelation. Marcus saw the flyer and left it on her sketchbook. For days she ignored it. Then one evening, she came into the living room where Marcus and I were reviewing photo plates for the book. "I'm going to submit something," she announced. My heart leapt. "That's wonderful. What will you—" "I don't know yet," she cut me off. But there was energy in her voice, not anxiety. "But it won't be paintings." She disappeared back into the studio, and for the next 3 weeks, she worked behind a closed door. The sounds were not of a brush on canvas, but of tearing, hammering, the whine of a Dremel tool, the crunch of plaster. The night before the submission deadline, she called us in. The centerpiece of the studio was a sculpture about 3 feet tall. It was a human form, but fragmented, pieced together from different materials. The torso was made from the shattered shards of a cheap, garishly glazed vase, one of Jeremy's early, failed gifts, held together with rough, visible bands of steel wire. One arm was carved from pale, smooth alabaster. The other was formed from the dark, coarse, wedged clay we had pounded that rainy day, fingerprints still visible. The head was featureless, but its surface was a mosaic of tiny, mirrored tiles, reflecting the room and us back in 100 distorted pieces. It was raw, brutal, and breathtakingly powerful. It was titled Provenance. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice hushed. "Chloe, it's exceptional. It's the physical manifestation of our book." "It's me," she said simply, her chin raised. "The broken ceramic he bought to flatter me. The rough clay Mom and I reclaimed. The cold stone of feeling nothing. The reflective surface of trying to see who I am now." She looked at me, her eyes clear for the first time in months. "It's not pretty, but it's true, and it won't explode in the kiln." I pulled her into a tight hug, my face wet against her hair. She had done more than make art. She had forged a new self from the fragments. Provenance was the talk of the exhibition. It won the Juror's Choice Award. A critic from a regional magazine wrote, "Coleman's work does not ask for sympathy. It demands witness. It is an archaeological dig of the self, displaying the strata of trauma and recovery with unflinching clarity." Jeremy's attempt to make her feel small had backfired spectacularly. He had given her the subject for her most powerful work yet. With Chloe emerging from her crisis, the book gained a new dimension. We decided to make it more than a guide. It would be a memoir of sorts, interweaving my career with the lessons. Marcus suggested we include a curated catalog of my collection at the end, not to boast, but to show why these pieces were worth protecting. "We show the real," he said, "so people can recognize the fake." This meant a full professional inventory. Marcus hired a photographer, a meticulous woman named Anya, who spent days capturing each piece under perfect lighting. I handled each vase, each sketch, each piece of jewelry, dictating its history to Marcus. Where Frank and I found it, what we paid, the story behind it. It was a joyful, melancholy process. I was reintroduced to my own life, to our life. Then we got to the Rothko sketch. Anya set up her lights. I went to the wall to take it down from its simple frame. As I did, I noticed what I'd never noticed before. The backing board was slightly warped, thicker than it should be. "Hand me your palette knife, Marcus," gently. With care, I slipped the blade between the backing and the frame. It wasn't glued, it was held by small, old-fashioned brads. As I loosened it, something slid out from between the sketch and the backing board. Not one thing, two. The first was a faded, folded piece of graph paper. Frank's familiar, precise handwriting covered it. Geological notes about the Sedona site, a grocery list, milk, bread, wine, and at the bottom, a quick, sweet note, "For B, who sees the color in everything, even me. F." I clutched it to my chest, a fresh wave of missing him washing over me. The second item was a photograph, old in black and white. It showed a handsome, smiling man in 1940s dress standing before an art gallery. On the back, in elegant cursive, it read, "Gabriel and the Gallery, 1947. For Eleanor, always." This was not Frank's. This had been hidden behind the Rothko long before we owned it. Marcus peered at it. The gallery, that's the Vanguard in New York. It was famous for showing the abstract expressionists early. This must be the original owner. He turned the photo over. Gabriel and Eleanor. Do you think this is the couple Rothko gave the sketch to? It was a gift, wasn't it? For their wedding? The provenance of the sketch had always been a romantic mystery. A gift from the artist to a young patron couple, lost to time. We now had names, faces. This changes everything, Marcus breathed. This isn't just a valuable sketch. It's a documented piece of art history. The value just... I don't care about the value, I whispered, tracing Frank's note. But I understood. The sketch was now even more of a target. And Jeremy's warning about the curator echoed in my mind. Someone with inside knowledge would know a story like this, would covet a piece like this. We had just unearthed a treasure, and in doing so, we might have sounded a dinner bell. The offer came a week later, via a sleek, cream-colored envelope delivered by a uniformed courier. The return address was a law firm in Manhattan. Inside was a letter on heavy, watermark-rich paper. It was from a Mr. Alistair Finch, representing a private European client with a profound admiration for American modernism. The client had heard through the most discreet channels about my Rothko sketch and its newly rediscovered provenance. They were offering a sum so astronomically high it made my breath catch. It was an offer of respect for the piece's significance, and they wished for a swift and confidential transaction. "No," I said to Marcus and Chloe as we sat at the kitchen table with the letter. "It's not for sale. Frank found it. It's part of our story." "It's also a massive security risk now," Marcus said quietly. "B, this offer, it's too high. It's a we will not be refused number. And the speed, the secrecy, it doesn't feel right." "How did they hear about the provenance?" "We haven't published anything. Only we, the photographer, and Detective Morrison know." "The curator." The name hung unspoken in the air. This felt like a new tactic. Not theft, but a forced, pressurized purchase. Legitimate on the surface, but with the threat of something darker underneath if refused. "What do we do?" Chloe asked, her newfound confidence faltering. "We follow the process," I said, feeling a steely resolve settle in. "We treat it like a suspicious artifact. We investigate the provenance of the offer itself." Marcus took the letter to a contact at the museum who specialized in art law. His report was troubling. Vanderbilt and Klein was a legitimate, prestigious firm. However, Alistair Finch was a relatively new partner, previously based in Zurich. His client list was opaque, shielded by Swiss privacy laws. The museum contact's off-the-record opinion. The offer is clean, but the money behind it might be from a gray collection. Someone building a portfolio with no questions asked. They want the story as much as the art. It adds legitimacy. I drafted a reply with Marcus's help. I thanked Mr. Finch for his generous offer, but stated the sketch was a cherished part of my late husband's legacy and was not, and would never be, for sale. I wished his client luck in their search. The reply came within 48 hours, not by courier, but by a single, typed line on a plain note card, delivered in my mailbox. "A legacy is only as secure as... Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own stories of spotting life's